Hello friends, my name is Ihor Havryshchak. This is the traditional YouTube platform of Channel 24. Our guest, political strategist Mikhail Sheitelman. Mr. Mikhail, hello. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Hello, Igor. Let me remind our viewers, this is a live broadcast, so be active, like, comment. Write adequate, constructive comments. And, of course, do not forget, Mikhail Sheitelman has a YouTube channel and has a goal. Now he has 497,000. You need 3,000. You need to subscribe. And that's it. And there will be 500,000. Mikhail Sheitelman's goal is 500,000, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Mikhail. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for mentioning it. Perhaps today the channel can have 500,000 subscribers. Literally today. Because now there is a huge stir around the channel in connection with the anniversary of the channel. Join and subscribe. Moreover, there is more than enough news. We are on the air, I remind you. Today, August 16th, Mr. Mikhailo, news and operational basis, because something was burning in Kerch, the Kerch bridge is under attack. And then the Tu-2M3, Russian, fell over Irkutsk and Kursk, we recall. Overall, let's start with. And let's start from the Kerch bridge. Because something was burning, the Kerch bridge was blocked. And good information with the United States of America fits here. It seems that the United States is ready to give us ATACMS missiles, but to use them not on the Kursk region, but on the Kerch bridge. Because it is the ATACMS for Ukraine that has a limited amount to allocate, which surprised me very much, such information. But the fact is that it seems that the green light on the Kerch bridge is already there. What is happening there? We do not know to the end, as I understand it. At least, I don't know where we got there. Obviously, we got somewhere good. As for the missiles too, first of all, it's like two pieces of news about the ATACMS, and there is news about JASSM, and that's what the missile is called. PM-130 JASSM. This is more good news, because we are getting them for the F-16, missiles that have a range of up to 300 kilometers. And these JASSM missiles mean that we will have a lot of them, I would say, in large numbers. This expands our opportunities, I think, very much. And with permission to hit immediately, I don't know where they will allow you to hit with an F-16. Because there are, nuances, for example, the F-16. The Netherlands told us that we could hit the territory of Russia with the F-16. The Netherlands handed over these planes to us with permission to hit the territory of Russia. And here begins such a duality. Yes, they give us missiles, the Americans give us, and the plane is Dutch. Can we already or can't? Judging by the plane, judging by the rocket, imagine, we were given guns and shells. This cannon can be fired at Russia, but this shell cannot be fired. It will be a controversial question for sure. But generally speaking, it's a joke aside, and it seems to me that we are moving in the right direction in relations with America. They can now allow us a lot, because they saw that red lines, in general, can be violated. Putin did not declare a nuclear war or declare a general mobilization. Maybe he will, but the fact is that he did not even threaten with nuclear weapons. They were convinced that Putin wants, on the contrary, a desire for negotiations for any of our escalations. You have noticed, the attack on Kursk has been going on for 10 days, and Putin has never threatened with nuclear weapons. And why? Because he wants negotiations. He wants to show, on the contrary, that no, look, I am a peacemaker. And, by the way, Mr. Mikhail, if we talk about negotiations, I would also like to recall Lukashenko's last speech. In general, I think it is a bit unfortunate to comment on Lukashenko in such a situation, because he can say a lot of different things. But here he was proposing to sit down at the negotiating table with all, as he says, participants in the conflict and end, quote, the fight. Well, in general, Putin had already somehow said on the 7th and then a couple of days later, on the 12th, Gerasimov said that we will pull back the defense forces from the Kursk region, and Putin said that there is no one to negotiate with the Kiev regime, and then Lukashenko says that we need to sit down at the negotiating table. How can all this fit into one concept? Well, Putin was obliged to say that there were no negotiations, but how else could he do it? At the same time, we understand that through all channels they are trying, on the contrary, to achieve these negotiations at any cost. Here I say, what they did not carry out, well, not even a verbal escalation. Well, when did this happen? Now we will get to Lukashenko. But let's put it this way, during our full-scale war, I think that about 10 nuclear threats separated from Russian leaders, not propagandists, but officials. About 10. This is only from the top leadership of the Russian Federation. This was definitely from Medvedev, from Volodin, from some important deputies of the State Duma. There were threats to use nuclear weapons in response to various actions. For example, if we hit Crimea, we were threatened that nuclear weapons would be used. They also warned that if we captured Kherson, as they called it, or if Germany handed over tanks to us, there would be a strike on Berlin. In addition, if the Hague court does not drop the charges against Putin, they will hit the Netherlands. And if Lithuania continues to block transit to the Kaliningrad region, they will hit Vilnius. Well, in general, if planes take off from Poland, F-16s, they will strike Warsaw with nuclear weapons. These were all such state statements. And separately, there are also statements by propagandists who give out something every day. Washington is being bombed, everything is being bombed, the whole world is being burned. And here are 10 days of attacks on the territory of Russia, in fact, on the Kursk region, and not a single nuclear threat. And in my opinion, this can only be in one case, when they may be trying to conduct behind-the-scenes negotiations with the Americans and Germans, for example, with the text, "Persuade Ukraine to withdraw from the territory of the Russian Federation at any cost, and we will pretend that nothing happened, that no one entered Russia," and so on. Because otherwise, escalation, but how can we, and so on. I think now these are huge behind-the-scenes negotiations. And Lukashenko plays it in the public field, because Putin cannot. Putin must then justify himself to the Russians. How is that? We are really in charge in Russia, and he is negotiating here. Therefore, instead of himself, he sent Lukashenko, which is not the first time, with this message. Lukashenko has repeatedly carried out similar tasks. And besides, I think they believe in him. This is already some kind of religious faith in Lukashenko. Lukashenko once stopped the hot phase of the war, when there were Minsk I and Minsk II. And a year ago, he also stopped Prigozhin, when it seemed that the military political leadership of Russia had already fled the city. The last person to defend Moscow was Lukashenko. So they have now asked him to defend Russia from Ukrainian occupation. By the way, Mr. Mikhail, if we talk about the fact that Putin is silent, then it is worth noting that this is happening against the backdrop of a long active phase on his territory. Now, in particular, it is worth remembering the hundreds of prisoners, because this is really a fabulous and incredible story. He calmly meets with Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas and discusses his issues. As a rule, in such cases, when there are some tsunamis or problems on your territory, I just give this as an example, all visits and meetings are cancelled, and all concentration is directed to eliminating disasters in your territory. But you have already explained that Putin does not comment on the situation and continues to live his life in Russia. But the point is that not only is there no nuclear threat to Putin, since the operation in Kursk has actually been going on for 10 days, and the situation for Russia is not improving. That is, the advance of the defense forces continues, and control over the territories is preserved. Zelensky are talking about it, creating a military commandant's office. That is, they do what they want. Well, again, as near Ryls, another column was defeated today, as Mr. Mikhail says. The column near Korneev was also defeated. As I understand it, those who are there in uniform continue to live in isolation from reality. They have a goal to block this direction and that's it. And then all the columns will be lost, well, and the prisoners. Yesterday there were 102 prisoners. Phenomenal. The Kadyrovites, the Strokovites, and for the first time during the full-scale invasion, Russia itself, as Lubinit says, the ombudsman turned to the fact that they were talking about negotiations. This is very important. Yes, look, so, first of all, politically, purely PR and medianically, the strategy has obviously been chosen that nothing is happening in our country at all. That everything is normal, everything is in order. And even Putin at the very first meeting, when he spoke for the first time. It was also a meeting with the government. He said that I would now have another regular working meeting with the security forces, and there I would do something like this. He stressed that this is an ordinary working meeting, not an emergency one. And he really behaves in such a way that nothing has happened in the country. And he is not alone. Because, for example, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Belousov, as we know, was silent. That is, he has not yet said anything about the events in the Kursk region. This is the Minister of Defense. This war has been going on for 10 days in the Kursk region. So, at first, he just sits at all sorts of meetings, is present, yes. Then he made a speech at the Army 2024 forum, where he made theoretical reports on modern warfare. Then the day before yesterday he met with the defense ministers. Even I am not sure that they were defense ministers, but representatives of the Ministry of Defense of Nigeria and Burkina Faso. There was an official report about it. And finally, yesterday he spoke for the first time. They said, well, he started talking about this war of ours. No, he started talking about the defense of the Belgorod region. That is, how to organize the defense of the Belgorod region. And he gave instructions about this in detail. How, what to do in the Belgorod region. As if Kursk does not exist at all. This is political. They are hushing up all this on purpose, so that, as they say, the people are not disturbed by anything. Everything, they say, is fine. But the question now is, what are they doing from a military point of view? I don't know, because there is already such an opinion. Well, I can't say for sure that this is true or not, that Putin said not to transfer anything special there at all to protect the Kursk region. Like, his main direction is Donbass. We are going according to plan. That the Ukrainians, well, okay, the Ukrainians will mess around on our territory, as they say. The main thing for us is to grab what we need. Well, this can happen, in principle. Just the day before yesterday, Western newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, began to write for the first time that the Russians were transferring something there. But it is also unclear what they are transferring from the front there to the Kursk region. I don't know what our plan will be next, because it seems that the Russians, on Putin's orders, decided to give preference to the attack on Pokrovsk rather than the defense of Kursk. And whether we take such a situation, Kursk or not, I, of course, do not know. I cannot say anything. About prisoners and exchanges, here is a question of the socio-political significance of those people who were captured. What is important is that conscripts were captured. There are already different figures that are being called. Up to 2,000 people are called. Most of them are conscripts. And unlike contract soldiers and officers, conscripts have families. Conscripts are not declassed elements who went to kill for some money. No, these are Russian contract soldiers and officers. Yes, these are people who are mainly alcoholics, drug addicts, former convicts. Well, someone is a former convict. So they went to kill for money. And their families know that they are kind of hired to die. Everything is fine, there are no questions about it. And conscripts were not hired to kill, they were not hired to die. They were forced to join the army. Therefore, they have parents. Many of them may even have influential parents. And they have lawyers. After all, they can be hired by lawyers. This is not a contract soldier for whom you cannot hire a lawyer. Therefore, this situation, when 2,000 conscripts are in captivity, is a great potential for protests inside Russia. Therefore, the Russians are in such a hurry with this exchange. Well, I wanted to ask Mr. Mikhail that the conscripts' parents, families, and mothers, and even during the Chechen wars, also had big problems with the authorities in Russia. But it's probably important to note that there was no such dictatorship then, and yet, as I understand it, they are still worried about these possible unrests, and that's why they are the first to go to the front. The first to announce the exchange, which is supposedly already underway, is the press, which announces that the exchange is already underway. Because some said that they were from Chechen units, but I think that there are literally a few Chechens there. They would have been exchanged quietly. No one would have withdrawn on behalf of the government of the Russian Federation. It seems to me that our people have already made some kind of targeted exchanges with Kadyrov and his leaders, figuratively speaking, several Akhmet fighters for many of ours. But this does not need the government of the Russian Federation. We do not need official representatives of the Russian Ministry of Defense. And now all this is because of conscripts, of course. Mr. Mikhailo, last time we talked about the reaction, that the world is civilized and our partners support what Ukraine is doing because it meets all international standards for the protection of its territory. There was not a single reaction that said, well, maybe you don't need to do that there. Everyone supports, to one extent or another. I would like to ask you something else. In terms of motivation, we know that people in Ukraine have taken a new interest in something on the front line because the Kursk direction has emerged. Because even before the 6th of September, everything was so quiet that it seemed like 2015 and the ATO counterterrorism operation in the east. To what I lead. There's a lot of thinking going on. We started to put out opinions when we had digested a lot of information, as they say, slept with this idea, with a cold head. Shouldn't these elite forces, by the way, with new equipment, with Western equipment, which the challenges have already seen in this area, be sent east instead of going to Kursk? From the point of view of political technology, it was still better to start in Kursk and raise the issue of war and the defense of the territory again. And, importantly, I'm so, sorry, voluminous, the reaction of Major General Christian Freuding from Germany, who is coordinating the events in Ukraine. He says the following: if you can take the initiative, you should do so immediately. Of course, as they say, I am not a military expert, so I will speak, of course, as a political strategist. Although first I will say, for some reason, I suspect that the forces that went to Kursk, they have other competencies, not defensive, but offensive. These are differently trained people, it seems to me. Because I don't know how the Challenger tank will help to defend Pokrovsk. It is necessary to attack the tanks. Of course, this changes everything. It's just that this can't be seen as only. No, a military word is not appropriate here. Okay, I will start from afar. War is not only a physical process of shooting and mutual destruction. War is a complex event. Because a shootout is a shootout. Some shoot, and others shoot. This is a shootout. War is interstate relations. Therefore, there is a mechanical element here. For example, a tank is driving, shooting, people are dying. This is a mechanical element. There is an economic element. They put pressure on each other with sanctions, or some unknown people blow up Nord Stream. This does not seem to be shooting, but these are economic measures. There is an element, of course, as we say, of morale, as an element of patriotism and so on. And it is absolutely necessary, because Ukrainians know, for example, the first thing that we are definitely right. That is, in this war, the truth is on our side, justice is on our side. We know that. And so our people sit and see that justice does not triumph, truth does not win, good does not defeat evil. What is to be done? And we have been seeing this for a long time. Probably the last significant victory, well, we had a victory on the front line, the liberation of Kherson, by and large, because everything that we recaptured in Robotino, we have already lost back. Yes, there were other victories. There were victories, for example, in the form of the fact that we bombed Russian refineries. These are also great military victories. Or, for example, the downing of some aircraft, A-50 radar systems, the downing of a strategic bomber. That is, if you write so expertly, then a lot of things. Submarines were sunk, the fleet was destroyed. All this also happened after Kherson. But there were no territorial conquests. And today we are looking at 70-something settlements. And, of course, everyone's heart rejoices, and, I am sure, the heart rejoices in every soldier at the front who is defending Pokrovsk today. Before that, he was sitting there and already knew that for a year and a half he had been moving only backwards. And now he knows that our army is moving forward. And then now let's do this. During this time, we have seized, well, yesterday the figures were already mentioned, 1,200 square kilometers of Russian territory. 1,200 square kilometers of Russian territory. Since the beginning of the year, the Russians have captured fewer square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. Even suppose I don't want to cry now, but let's assume that Russian troops are now 10 kilometers from Pokrovsk. And if they continue their offensive at this pace, our offensive is going faster. If they don't defend their territory, we'll capture their territory faster. And let's imagine, another year of war passes, but now I am drawing quite theoretically. And in a year, the Russians capture another 2,000 square kilometers. And we are 10,000 square kilometers. So what? Who defeated whom at this moment? What is going on? If we stop the war, then we change everything for all territories then. Therefore, we cannot win this war head-on, as it turned out. Well, because we are small. We are still smaller than Russia. We do not have this industrial power. I even mean the number of people there and the number of guided bombs and aircraft. So we need alternative methods. By the way, yesterday a viewer gave me a good example on the channel, left a comment. We remembered the following story. Yom Kippur War. Well, this is such a well-known term. And in 1973, Israel, it was attacked from different sides at the same time. And the two largest armies that attacked were the Syrian and the Egyptian, from the south and from the north. And Israel was coming to an end, literally. That is, the front had already been broken, everything was already very bad. And Israel was on the verge of using nuclear weapons as a last desperate step. It is not clear how all this would have ended. And then there was General Sharon, who later became the Prime Minister of Israel and commanded one of the two tank brigades that Israel had. And he himself, just himself, with his fighters, instead of defending the city of Tel Aviv on these tanks, went to the city of Cairo on tanks, to Egypt. He broke through the Egyptian defenses, crossed the Suez Canal and reached Cairo. And it turned out that if the Egyptians did not surrender now, then Israeli tanks would simply drive into the center of their capital. A small group, but it's a separate group. And so he won the war and became a national hero, and then prime minister. It was an absolutely asymmetrical move. Imagine that we have taken Moscow. Well, for a second. It will be an asymmetrical move. That's right, if we lose something here. But it will be beautiful. Well, in general, Mr. Mikhail, I wanted to ask you, but you have already answered, about the asymmetry and the fact that the event is going to Kursk. Again, I emphasize to the audience that I am definitely not a warrior, and you're even better at this, not being a warrior. But this is the asymmetry that somehow changes this war. Because, well, let's go from the other side. If there had been no operation in Kursk, this tactical advance of 100 meters would have been going on for months. But they kept pushing in the east, despite the fact that the Russians had more forces and means. And now everything is changing a little. And here you give the example of the Yom Kippur War and the entry of a tank unit into Cairo. I'm not saying it's... Well, you know, Igor, I just remembered another example. I don't remember whether he said it or not. It just doesn't sound quite so nice to us. But from a military point of view, it's the best proof that it works against Russia. The first Chechen war, not the second under Putin, but the first under Yeltsin, which took place, so it went on for several years. And it seemed that now the Chechens were being broken, because the entire Soviet army was thrown there. Yes, 1 million people, 1 million strong army fought against the Chechens, of whom there were less than 1 million. That is, they do not have an army of less than 1 million, but all of them. How an army of 50 million people would attack us? And all this is happening on a small patch of Chechnya. Well, that's it, the end. And Shamal Bashayev takes it, and drives Kamal's trucks on the road to Budyonnovsk. On the way, and handing out money at checkpoints so that he would be let through. And captures the city of Budyonnovsk. The whole city captures. And Russia gave up. Russia simply gave up. Chernomyrdin then negotiated with him, the prime minister. Until then, who will they negotiate with? These are some kind of terrorists, separatists. Chernomyrdin negotiated and they signed the Kharsavyurt Accords, which gave Chechnya 5 years of independence before Putin launched the Second Chechen War. Yes, Mr. Mikhailo, by the way, I would also like to mention the news of a completely different bloc, for example, but whether it is worth mentioning. The issue of blowing up Nord Stream 2 has been raised again, and a warrant has already been issued, which means that there is a Ukrainian involved. Interestingly, there is information that the OCIA has received information that Zelensky himself gave the go-ahead to blow up Nord Stream. What is the meaning of this information? Why is it appearing now? And why is it being discussed so actively now? Is this some kind of pressure on Ukraine? On Zelensky? There may be an element of pressure, if it has anything to do with the Russians, but I cannot say 100%. I will explain why. Indeed, the German investigative authorities have come to the conclusion that there is some person who has been discovered, for whom a warrant has been issued, and who is somehow connected to Ukraine. That's the story up to this point. I think this is the real story, that is, there is some person connected to Ukraine who was somehow involved in this, some traces were left, and I think that the German investigative authorities are also real. That is, all this is real, not PR. And then everything else, namely an article in the Wall Street Journal that if you saw it, I even read the headline yesterday, like, drunken party, expensive private yacht, and all this led to the explosion of Nord Stream. This is some kind of headline. Well, like Yellow News, you know? I had the feeling that I was reading The Sun, the yellow press of London, because there was not a single source there. That is, all these stories in the Wall Street Journal are such that everything is oral, verbal orders, that is, there are no papers. It was Zelensky who verbally ordered Zaluzny, who verbally said something to someone, and then said something else orally. And then there is such an argument, for example, in the Wall Street Journal, that these people who blew up Nord Stream sailed on a yacht on purpose. There were 5 men and 1 woman, so that it all looked like a friendly party. I thought, when it's a man and 1 woman again, it doesn't look like a friendly party, it looks like something else. I don't know. In general, so far, there are no specific materials behind all this story, except for a specific person detained in Germany. And here it looks to me as something pro-Russian in order to discredit Zelensky and generally worsen relations between Germany, well, or America and Ukraine in this matter. Now what is the critical moment? We are now using Western weapons on the territory of Russia. Apparently, we did not ask for permission to do this, but took advantage of, roughly speaking, the holes in our agreements. Is it possible to use the agreement? You can use it, but only along the border. Well, we are along the border there for 100 kilometers, yes, not deeper, and only against forces that directly threaten Ukraine. We are against forces that directly threaten Ukraine. That is, we did all this, and the Americans even recognized it today. At night, I think, Kobe said on this topic that, well, yes, formally everything is correct. Everything is right, what Ukraine is doing. And now they are trying to quarrel us in the same sense. That is, look, Ukraine is so independent. It does such things without an agreement with the United States. Everyone was thrown and so on. That is, maybe. Mr. Mikhail, what is your opinion now? Do you believe that the operation in the Kursk region was not coordinated or not known to our partners? I mean, let's remember that in the first days of the Kursk operation, there were statements by the US, Germany, and the majority of the US. We were not informed of the details, and we will ask Kyiv what it was. Perhaps this is how I remove myself from this reasonable red line that Russia shouted but did not follow. But they removed themselves. They say it is the armed forces of Ukraine. I am absolutely sure that this operation was prepared jointly with the Pentagon. That is flat. Or with some other organizations, let's say, Western ones. That is, we did not prepare it for any person. That this go-ahead was given at least in the Department of Defense and in the CIA. In the USA, that is flat. I don't know, for example, whether Biden decided this. In principle, they could not have asked Biden. He is not obliged to personally lead the fronts. Correct? Here is the Minister of Defense. Our people come to him with such an idea. Austin, on the other hand, has special people. Special operations forces, who carry out the most secret operations. Or we communicate with the CIA. And, again, some special forces for the preparation of special operations are working for us. Thank God, special operations exist in the world. And all the ministries of defense are not obliged to prepare them. Because everything had to be secret. Because there are Russian spies in the Pentagon too. Do you understand why we couldn't prepare ourselves? Impossible, for example. Yes, we can transfer troops ourselves as we want. But we cannot transfer weapons as we want. Because when we transfer weapons, we coordinate it in Ramstein. Where should we supply and how much of what? This is logistics. And then we need some certain types of weapons and ammunition. And we will not be able to ask for one thing, as if for the sake of the defense of Pokrovsk, and then use it when capturing the Kursk region, because these are different types of weapons and different types of ammunition, and different types of equipment for our soldiers. That is, we had to ask for something specific for such an offensive operation. The second is intelligence. We do not have such reconnaissance capabilities, which, judging by the tremendous success of our army, have been used. Because we just knew and saw everything. This is obvious, and we could see all this only from American satellites. And they transmit to us online only data from Ukraine, from the territory of Ukraine. That is, from Crimea, yes, from Kursk, no. They themselves have officially announced more than once that they do not transmit data from the territory of the Russian Federation online. It means that they are being handed over to us now. Well, they pass them on in some form. That's why no. I'm absolutely sure that everything was agreed with everyone. It doesn't have to be Schultz and Biden, but they were military and intelligence officers. Mr. Mikhailo, I would like to mention the internal processes at this stage in the United States of America in the context of Ukraine, of course. I was surprised that Elon Musk interviewed Trump. Why did Elon Musk interview Trump? Dozens of untruths have already been counted there. And Elon Musk, who has built an empire with taxpayers' money. Everything is there. The state subsidizes it. Such an odious person is interviewed by Trump. And here I want to mention that Kamala Harris has a bad relationship with Zelensky. A wave rose again before the full-scale invasion began. Are the Republicans doing this? But I have a feeling now, as of the 16th of August, that there are two evils. We need to choose the lesser and root for someone. What does it all look like for you? My American friends, of whom I have many, will be offended by me. They have an opinion in half, as we know. We know the ratings of Trump and Harris today. And over the past 2 to 3 weeks, on average, Kamala Harris has won 0.4% against Trump. That's the first thing. Second, in key swing states, Kamala Harris is also ahead of Trump. This is what we have today. I listened to this interview for a significant part. More than 90% of the time they discuss topics that do not concern us, in my opinion. They discussed what, didn't they? Inflation in the United States. They discussed something about some private jets being purchased for the US president. That is, some corruption was discussed and so on. Immigration was discussed. I listened to most of Trump's questions. I understand that these issues are in the focus of voters' attention, not Ukraine. And we are only interested in Ukraine. Therefore, it seems to me that our government and our diplomacy are certainly engaged in this. They are preparing in advance for relations with both Harris and Trump, discussing how it will all look under this or that president. Both of them are being persuaded, I think, both Harris and Trump. But now let's look at what is now, like now, if from their current positions. So, Trump, what he managed to say from Elon Musk, in general, is unpleasant for us. Because he managed to say that Russia has a terribly strong army, and we, therefore, are weak, only old people and children are fighting us. And these ideas about the strength of Russia are taken from historical mistakes. He says that Russia is strong, it defeated Germany and defeated Napoleon. But he does not understand that it was not Russia, that it was the Russian Empire. And now it is the Russian Federation. It is a completely different country, in which the population is half as much as in the country that fought with Germany. And that most of the people who defeated Germany, they remained not in the Russian Federation, but in Ukraine, Belarus, the countries of Central Asia, the Caucasus and so on. That is, in their minds of Trump, as well as in the minds of many Western politicians, the word Russia is associated with that huge empire, which really had a lot of resources. And the current Russian Federation does not have an intellectual resource. This is the main thing. They only have oil. That is, there is money, but there is no intelligence. Therefore, she does not know how to fight much. Well, you need to know this. Now about Kamala Harris, the fact that there is allegedly some kind of bad relationship is not serious, by the way. We have not yet heard from Kamala Harris a clear position on Ukraine. What is she going to do? We didn't hear that. I hope we will hear it at the debate on September 10th. But articles about the alleged bad relationship between Zelensky and Harris are not serious. Why? Well, they, the Americans, have nothing personal in such a policy. They never look at it as a personal matter. This was not a conversation between Kamala Harris and Zelensky in Munich. It was a conversation between the US Vice President and the President of Ukraine. That's all. Tomorrow there will be a different president. What's the odds? This was the president, and this is the vice president, and she acted as the vice president of the United States in accordance with her agenda and the decisions of the administration. When there is a different agenda and other decisions, she will speak differently. That's all. There are no personal relationships in any case. It's not Lukashenko and Putin, yes, who are kissing in the bathhouse. This is all an American tradition, where we have such interests or some political decisions today. We should forget about the relationship between Zelensky and Harris at all, and watch what she says. She hasn't said yet. Trump has expressed his policy on Ukraine, and Kamala Harris has not yet expressed anything. I'll have to listen to her. Let me remind our viewers that we are live, and 5,000 people are watching us. Please actively like and leave comments on Mikhail's YouTube page. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss important updates. In terms of assistance to Ukraine, from a military point of view, Republicans always say that we need to give more, while Democrats give little, in teaspoons. I have been told so many times that the Democrats are teaspoons of aid to Ukraine, the Republicans are just. It probably doesn't look like a Kinder Surprise. Here is a Kinder Surprise from the Democrats. We know what kind of toy it is, we want a big toy. But the Kinder is closed from the Republicans, and what will happen there? Either there will be nothing there, or there will be a little more toys. This is exactly the case that so far, although we have not heard Harris's position, I think that she will be forced to continue Biden's line. Because many documents are signed by her, albeit somewhere formal, as, for example, at the summit in Switzerland, and somewhere informal. And the team, some of it is significant, will remain, I think, under Kamala Harris. Therefore, in principle, we will see exactly what we saw under Biden. But what have we seen under Biden? In addition to aid, we've seen progress in that aid and progress in escalating relations with Russia. That is, the United States did not stand still. The position of the United States 2 years ago and now is completely different. Remember how they struggled with the question of whether to give HIMARS. Now we are talking about long-range missiles of aircraft, you know? It's not HIMARS here, is it? Then the issue was discussed. It was a dispute. No one knew whether the Americans allowed us to fight in Crimea at all. Well, when we were the first to strike at Crimea, we were told that yes, Crimea is also your territory. And now we are fighting in the Kursk region. That is, the progress is huge, absolutely incredible. And it will continue. This is important. With the Republicans, we are now talking personally about Trump. Let's put it this way. It is not clear with Trump, because now he says one thing. What he will do tomorrow, he is absolutely unpredictable. Can he give us more? Can. Or maybe give less? Can. I will not presume to say what Trump will do. Why? I know his first step. He always tells only the first step. I will go and negotiate with Putin. Well, go. Well, he will do. And if he does not agree in the first 2 weeks? Here he did not tell further, and he will not agree. It's important. He will not agree. And we don't know what he will do. Therefore, it seems to me that we should not use the word Republicans here. Exactly, Trump. Republicans. By the way, the Republican speaker, correctly, accepted an aid package of $61 billion. And the majority of Republicans voted for it. Therefore, the Republicans support us. Here the question of personality is narrower. Trump and Harris. Well, yes, and from visiting Kyiv, Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal, they're Republicans and Democrats. They said about support, about more weapons, about attacking the full depth of weapons that we have in Russian Federation territory. I would also like to ask you, of course, about the Middle East and what is happening there, because it has been more than 2 weeks since the top leaders were killed, and Iran has said that there will be a response. The EU, the United States, and the G7 gathered. Everyone worked on non-escalation of the conflict. At what level is this escalation? That is, will Iran respond? Qatar says that Iran should think carefully about whether to do this. More and more parties are involved. I have a feeling, maybe I'm wrong, that this whole situation with Iran's response is somehow sad. And the response, if any, will not be as aggressive as Iran talked about in the first days after the liquidation. Yes, because no one wanted to fight much. Neither Iran nor Israel wanted to fight because of this conflict. That's a fact. But now Iran has decided that it has been persuaded, and it has decided to convert, roughly speaking, this threat into more realistic political steps. Because if Iran fired hundreds of missiles again, it would most likely not achieve any effect. And now Iran has made it a condition that if Israel now negotiates a truce with Hamas, Iran will not strike. And if it does not agree, then Iran strikes. This is a new way to persuade Israel to be more flexible in the negotiations. Mr. Mikhail, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what about liquidation? That is, even without liquidation, it was possible to set conditions, to negotiate with Hamas, to bomb, not to negotiate. No, it would look like Iranian aggression against Israel. These are different things. Even Israel, look, in April of this year, when Israel struck the Iranian embassy and killed a general there, Iran then fired hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel. And Israel did not respond. Imagine, Israel has something to respond to Iran, anything. But Israel understands that this is an honest exchange. Yes, you hit us with hundreds of missiles for doing this. And we will not answer. We will stop at this point. It is okay. And if Iran simply says, negotiate, or we will bomb you, then Israel could strike Iran first. This is not the way it is done in the Middle East. There, the strength imbalance is maintained all the time. It is necessary that the score is equal. And now negotiations are underway in Doha. Right now. Once, and between Hamas, the new leader of Hamas, and the Israelis, I don't know who is present there, honestly, and yesterday, as the mediators, and these are the Americans, Egyptians and Qataris, say that there is progress and they agreed that these talks will continue today. As far as I understand, this is a final settlement talks with Hamas. I think it is possible. The director of the CIA, the head of the Mossad and some representatives of Hamas are present. So Iran decided to do this. To exchange, roughly speaking, a military threat for a political one. Mr. Mikhailo, thank you very much for this conversation. I would like to remind our live viewers and new viewers who watch regularly to subscribe. There is a link to Mikhail Sheitelman's channel. By the end of the day, we need to make 500,000. Subscribe to channel 24 and comment. And, of course, share this conversation. This is how YouTube's algorithms work, so it allows more Ukrainians to watch this video. Mr. Mikhailo, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you. I remind our viewers that Polytechnician Mikhail Sheitelman was with us. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. We will see you on the air of Channel 24.